everyone. Welcome to Empowering Exceptional Minds, the podcast diving into neurodiversity through real conversations with parents, individuals, and professionals on challenges, strengths, and unique experiences. I'm your host, Maayan Glazer-Koren, an educational therapist, ADHD educator, and ASD specialist. At Educational Therapy LLC, my private practice, we support kids and adults with executive function and learning differences toward confidence and independence. This podcast is a collaboration with Wiz Therapy, connecting individuals to providers and streamlining services for neurodiverse communities. Our goal is to share strategies, stories, and insights to empower families, educators, and professionals. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast or Wiz Therapy. The conversations here are for information and empowerment, not a substitute for professional or medical advice. And most importantly, if you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please dial 911 immediately, or you can text 741-741 to reach the crisis text line in the US for support. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Empowering Exceptional Minds. I am in such a good mood. Every time I see my friend Sam here, a colleague, and I'm excited to introduce him. So we're going to talk about different ways of education. And Sam Young is from Young Scholars Academy, and he's joining us for an inspiring conversation. He's also the visionary of Young Scholars Academy, a virtual learning community redefining what it means to educate gifted, twice exceptional, and neurodivergent students. Great for homeschoolers, by the way. Away from deficit models that measure learning by what students can do, Sam and his team focus on strength, passions, and curiosity, empowering students to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally instead of merely what we see many times as surviving school, which is really kind of hit my guts. So in this episode, Sam is going to share with us his personal path into education, how and why he built a strength-based virtual village that meets learners where they are, and what it really takes to design a curriculum and learning experiences that honor both brilliance and challenge. We're also going to explore what lesson planning for gifted and differently wired learners look like in practice, and how mentors can get it so-and-so in ways traditional classrooms often don't, and how education can shift from compliance to joy and curiosity. Sam, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Did I miss anything?
You did such a great introduction. You don't even need me to say anything today.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Okay, thanks for having me, everyone.
Bye. Okay, that's all, folks. No, just kidding. Just stay tuned, you guys. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. So let's start with some big ideas here. What got you to do what you do?
I think, like most people, you don't trip and fall into the neurodiversity space by accident. I find that usually it's one of a couple reasons, and for me, it's deeply personal. Both as an individual, I was diagnosed with ADHD in second grade, and also as a familial, my dad, who always interested me a great deal, struggled a lot as what I would later become aware of as like a twice exceptional adult. So I became curious at a really young age about my brain. I spent a lot of time being told that I needed to, fix things. I have dyslexia, phonics and encoding, and despite my willpower, I could never really read very well. So I learned some lessons over the course of my life and realized if I could help young people, like at a really early age, have an intervention of sorts where they don't have all those feelings of, I'm broken, I need to do this, the one thing that matters in school I cannot do. If I could help people avoid that and instead develop things that help them feel good, contribute to society, live better lives, that would be pretty awesome. So ultimately, the long answer is it's really personal for me personally as an individual, as a neurodivergent individual, and it's personal for me as the son of a man who is also neurodivergent, and and then meeting families and kids all around the world who are, I think, having similar struggles. It just made sense to stop having the same conversation with everyone and start helping.
It's such a nice way to put it. I mean, I also struggled as a learner. Welcome to our therapy session, one-on-one, Mayan and Sam. But I also struggled as you know, in elementary school. When I was in elementary school, there weren't that many assessments, and you know, it was always I felt not good enough. I felt that everything I do, I can't get it, and why I can't get it. And I do have a learning disability in math, and I didn't know that this is what is happening. And of course, this is affecting, like you say, also your self-esteem. Like you feel broke. I mean, I felt broken. Like I felt not smart. And that's very hard that for other people around you, things maybe, you know, we're sitting there in the classroom and things that come easier, maybe for them, not for everybody. And when you are dealing with this yourself and don't have, you know, those people who understand you, it's very difficult to move from that. So it's definitely something that, you know, emotionally impact us. Um, so when did you realize that what it means for students to feel seen and supported and excited about learning again? I mean, when was that shift in your life? I don't know, what did you do, like, you know, academically? What was your path after high school that got you to kind of go dive into this kind of work?
Yeah, it's so, and again, feeling the way you felt, and it stays with you for life. I want to speak to what you
Mm-hmm.
just said. It stays with you for life, and I think that there's, quite frankly, for anyone who's listening, if you are struggling and going through this, skill is a very narrow, excuse me, school is a very narrow skill set, right? If we look at multiple intelligences and we agree that there's, seven, eight, or nine different kinds of intelligence, like Howard Gardner laid out, then across the board we could probably agree three of them are, actively used in most classrooms, maybe four maximum. So when I look back at my life, I realize I have skills and intelligence that just didn't matter in that narrow subset of skills that mattered in school. And I would get like praise and recognition and things for those, but it was often outside the context of school.
Mm-hmm.
And but that to what you were saying, it stays with you. I still feel all those things. I still feel stupid. I still, I'm a bad reader. And when you develop those at an early age, they have sticking power. And the opposite is true, right? Like the opposite is when you develop confidence in those spaces or strategies at an early age, that also has sticking power. So I think that's really important. And I like to kind of think about like I think about like visual. I'm a very visual thinker. I think about like
Mm-hmm.
visual, the transparencies, like a projector, like a,
Mm-hmm.
pre, I don't know, PowerPoint presentations. Think about like the trajectory of someone's life, and then like a transparency laid over it for what it could look like if someone intervened early and helped them build confidence and feel good. And to answer, kind of like segue into your question, I remember going into high school, I had this really spiky profile. I would take like the elective classes with a lot of the students who traditionally struggled in school, and then in like one class, I'd be really accelerated. And I had this like I sort of hung out with everyone, right? Um, and my freshman year of high school, I had this amazing first English class. This guy was like so scary and exciting and silly but serious, and his name was Mr. Dunphy. And at the end of class, he's like, "Young, stick around for a minute." And I was like, "Here we go again. I'm in trouble." And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "What do you mean, sir?" And he's like, "You're wasting your time and my time." And I was like, "Oh, this guy already thinks I'm too stupid for this class." Like all my insecurities came up, and he said, like, "You should be in AP English." What? Like, the first day of class, this guy thinks it believes in me, and that never stopped all year. He pushed me. I stayed in his class because I liked him so much, and I learned so much. And it was the first time someone really believed in me academically. very different. I used to always be, at the earliest I can remember, second grade, kindergarten, my desk was like attached to the teacher's desk, or in the corner or something. I was always in trouble. Um, and that was a moment for me. And then I liked him so much, I wanted to be like him. So I decided I was going to be a teacher in ninth grade. And then, all the things come up for you, right? All the, history's hard to keep up with. Um, I developed this like great work ethic because I just thought if I can outwork everybody if I can't outthink them or outread them. So fast forward, I go to college. There were several intersections where I almost gave up. Excuse me. My allergies are acting up today. So of course, that's the day of a podcast. And I get to college. I want to be a history teacher. I want to be someone who really inspires people and so forth. And many times I almost quit. I'm too stupid. I can't keep up with the reading. Why'd I pick a degree that has 100+ pages a night? So I became like the library kid. I was just like outworking everybody. I was always there. I didn't have as many executive function skills at the time, so I didn't realize that like being someplace more doesn't mean you're necessarily going to use your time well, and Parkinson's law and all that stuff. But I worked hard, and when I was just about to give up my junior year, I was student teaching, and I thought I can't do this. I can't keep up with history. I can't be a teacher. I don't know the history. Like I'm too stupid. I can't remember things. And I had this amazing mentor, Mr. Buxton. He was like the teacher of the year in the state I was in, and he's an incredible guy. And he said, Sam, there's two parts of being a great teacher. One is the content, the second is the teaching. And he's like, you can't really teach teaching in a way that breaks through to kids. You can teach strategies, but you can't really teach it. And he's like, there's something about you that kids are drawn to. You just get people, they like you. I can teach you history. He's like, so, don't quit. We'll figure it out. And then he told me this funny story. He was a history teacher, and like, again, he was a history teacher of the year in Rhode Island. And he told me like his first year, um, someone asked him about like Sacagawea when he was teaching Lewis and Clark, and he's like, no, that's not right. You're mixing up your story. Like he made big mistakes in his history. And it just gave me that vulnerability to see him go from like someone who didn't know the stuff to someone who was the teacher of the year gave me such confidence. And so I think it's like these different interventions at different points in life made me want to give what I had gotten.
That makes so much sense. And there are so many anecdotes in your story that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so me in many cases. Shout out to my teacher who believed in me in high school, with Carmen Berg. And I took French because that's where I was doing really well with language. And yeah. And then when I went to college, like very similar to your story, I almost quit. Um, because I took geography and I didn't know how much math involved in that and statistics. And I just like, this is too much. And I did switch to French because that's where my strength was. And so to those who are listening to this podcast and you are college students, you got this. Or your parents are college students, it's okay. All right. So
Can I just speak to that for a moment as
yeah,
well?
sure.
By the way, on peut parler français one time if you like. I lived in France. Il y a 10 années, j'ai passé une année en France. Um, so we could speak French sometime.
C'est
Uh,
super.
Merci. My French is not as good as it used to be, but yeah, I want to say that if you are in college and if you're or a parent of a kid in college who's struggling, I would say like try to plan backwards as much as you can. Think forward to where you hope to be,
Mhm.
and try to focus in on developing the skills and the traits and spending your time doing the things that you think will set you up for success in that way. And by the way, you should get outside of yourself. You're probably not qualified if you're a student to say like this is what it takes to be a successful accountant, right? See if you can get mentors, expert experience, etc. But don't let what you're being taught or the way in which you're being taught make you think that you won't do a good job.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, the people who are truly exceptional don't do what they were taught anyway. They do something wildly different, which is why we then celebrate them. So your version may be better or closer to what that thing ought to look like and will look like. I think that's true with a lot of things, socializing, investing. The world's changing quickly. So develop skills that are aligned with what's really happening. And again, if you can look past college and get real insight, real data. What are people looking for? What matters right now? What are problems to solve? And start working towards those at an earlier age and get experience towards that. I think that's one of the most attractive things that you can do.
I think it's wonderful, and I couldn't not say it better. And I think it's also tie up to what we're here today. Also, is kind of to talk about um, your amazing school that you kind of opened. And so, if you can share with our listeners, uh, okay, everybody, we're not trying to sell you anything. This is really about how you can be an entrepreneur and using your strength and to do really well, like what Sam was saying right now. Um, so if you can tell a little bit about what do you do in your school, how you design a curriculum that will kind of, I like to say, scratch people's brain, kids' brain the right way.
Absolutely. I say light them on fire. I like this idea of igniting. Um, the truth of the matter is this, that I was teaching at a really progressive, fantastic school for twice exceptional students. And if anyone's not familiar, twice exceptional refers to someone who is exceptional in two ways. They have exceptional strengths. They might have like a really above average IQ or creativity, etc. That could also be physical. They could have a high prowess at like gymnastics, let's say, and at the same time have an exceptional difficulty. So for me, speaking personally, I identify as twice exceptional. I have ADHD and dyslexia, and so that's the struggles. And I have, some strength areas where I have really high interpersonal intelligence and I can communicate effectively and I can inspire people. And I think creatively and abstractly and visually. So I have these outsized, if you think like high highs and low lows, essentially. And what I found was that the brightest kids were not doing well in school. And it's easy to spend, and this is what most of society does, trying to get the kids to fit into the school model.
Yep.
And what I realized is that the school model is the problem, and that we should get kids to build education around themselves, right? And we should help build education around these bright minds because it's easy to sit here and throw stones at the system, and the system is outdated. Speaking as someone who is American, I can say it definitely got us where we are, no doubt. Like it served us extraordinarily well at the turn of the 20th century, industrial America into the really like through the Cold War, no doubt. And it's not kept up. So when we look at these kids, again, I'm a very visual thinker. I realized I'm having the same conversations with all these people, bright kids, struggling, not learning until they get home, right? Like at the focus at school is like, you're not turning in your work, you're behind. Why do you not participate? And then they would go home and go on like Reddit or forums or, YouTube. And then they were really learning. And then everybody was saying to me, my kid's lonely, they're struggling, they're not socializing. And I just had this silly like X and Y visual. I was like, oh, everybody's in the dark, like they're way off on the side of the x-axis. And if we can bring them into the center where they like to do what they do, that's the y-axis, they can go deep, right? So if you can shift them in to be with their people, learning what they like, guess what? Who else takes World War I weaponry or, you know, um, AI coding or robotics, right? It's kids like your kid or kids like you, people like you. So it just was so obvious to me. I was like, well, what if we did college level classes for 5-year-olds? That was kind of my like testing hypothesis. We have kids who have off the chart IQs. What if we give them what they want? And sure enough, parents were like, could my cousins join? Could my, and then it became bigger than something that could be in person because I was teaching full time and I was doing this kind of locally, virtually. And then COVID hit. I was like, wow, okay, now everybody's embracing virtual quickly. And so it just became abundantly apparent that like college level electives are where it's at for kids. Not history 101, right? But like weapons of mass communication propaganda, right? That's attractive, right? Or like not, math, geometry, but taking like statistics and game theory,
Mhm.
right? Like, oh, okay, that's cool. So what we do is we're a virtual enrichment village. We offer radically accelerated courses And I believe that kids need three things to be successful. They need what we call the three C's. One is the content. So they need really high level content. We have over 150 unique classes that meet an hour a week throughout the whole school year. And then we have the community, right? The kids like the kids. So who takes, mock trial, right? Or yeah, AI, large language model coding, or Linux club. It's like it's kids like these kids. So then we're a virtual live class with 6 or 8 kids maximum in the class. And then the third one is we call our caring mentors, like our teachers. And all of our teachers are grown-up versions of the kids, like myself. They're twice exceptional, gifted adults. Many of them also parent twice exceptional or gifted kids. And so when you bring these three together, you have kids doing radically accelerated stuff with kids that they're like, and you have adults who can say, "Hey, it's going to be okay. I'm just like you, and I love that goofy thing. Let's build rocket ships together and do a flight simulator," or whatever it might be.
Oh my God. You're like the stuff you're describing my son.
It's
I
a lot
need
of
to send
people.
you to one of the classes.
Yeah, please send them over. Send them over.
He will be one of the teacher. He will teach you guys that your guys are making errors in your calculation with aviation.
Okay, good.
Um, he's really fantastic little dude. So, oh my gosh, I'm blushing. To our listeners, I am blushing because I'm like Sammy's talking, and all I have in my head is my little dude and his, you know, he's like a soul, like an old soul in a little
Exactly.
boy's body that
Yeah.
he's really interested in all this kind of stuff that you mentioned.
And that's a
Um,
complicated profile. When you have like this older brain, this older soul, but also like lagging social emotional maturity, it's complicated, right? Because you have these kids who, we have a 12-year-old, or she's now 13, but she's been with us since she was 9. And, at 9 years old, off the charts IQ, she's talking about global warming, right?
mhm.
And kids her age aren't interested in that, neurotypical kids. So she has this deep passion and also not the emotional maturity to handle the complexity of that topic. So you need a space for that kid. She's not going to hang out with older kids who are talking about it because she's socially, emotionally not as mature as them. At the same time, she can't hang out with kids her age because she's intellectually far beyond them. So the only place for her is with adults, which is what our kids naturally gravitate towards, adults. But that's also not enough because they need peers. And all the research is clear on this. So I just thought, well, what if we create this virtual space where these kids can have their similarly aged peers with intellectual curiosity at the same level, and then have someone who's like a professional who can really kind of cushion the environment and say, I know you're an accelerated reader, and I know that most of the book clubs for kids older than you are inappropriate for you. So we're going to give you accelerated content in this space, or we're going to help you learn how to be an actor, but without talking about, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But we're going to pick these scripts that, whatever it might be.
I think it's gonna. I did have a question for you, but I feel like you kind of answer that because one of my question was is that how do you go deep, right? Like these kids, what they need, and then but our gifted kids, our TUI kids, also have sometimes they feel really burned out or feeling misunderstood. So like knowing how to teach that and how to support and balance, um, like with humor and with, like you said, not teach them about where it's emotional safe for them. It's really important.
Absolutely. And humor is huge. I mean, being able to like get these kids jokes and everything, a lot of these kids are existing in fight or flight mode,
True.
right? They're in a constant state of anxiety, and they're in their, like really high levels of fear, anxiety, doubt, all the things. And what we have found is the goal, the formula that works, and we've had 1,700 kids over the last 6 years. So we have this pretty repeatable formula, which is if you can have high rigor, interesting topics that are authentic, and low demands, right? So I'm not going to ask anyone to do a worksheet, right? We're not going to
Yes.
ask anyone to like do a book report, right? But
Yes.
we are going to have a debate on this subject, and you better know your stuff. By the way, here's how you can put together a speech, and it's happening in 2 weeks. So let's break it down quick because this is real life, right? Or hey, instead of just studying biology, what if you made a website that brings awareness to what actually is happening in the world. And then a kid can go deep. So we have like we call like the two D's. It's dabble, right? What's really nice. And again, this is not me selling Young Scholars Academy. These are like universal truths.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I don't care if you come to me. Of course I do. I hope you do. But I want this for your child no matter where you are in this world. So number one is dabble. It's the horizontal, right? Can you try all kinds of different things? This is super important. Kids don't know what they don't know, and they have really unique brains that latch onto niche stuff. So if you're a parent of a twice exceptional, gifted, bright, quirky kid, you have almost a larger obligation to expose them to unique things because they're going to latch on to probably not a school subject, although they'll have a preference. They're going to latch on to some quirky thing that they found in the depths of the web. The blackest black. We have two kids. I have an email that if I read you, you would cry. It's essentially a mom saying, "My son made his first two friends here." And he bonded with this boy over the blackest black paint. They'd seen the same YouTube video. And the mom said he's running around the house saying, "Mom, I have two friends now." And it's like that kid's not making friends elsewhere. If you have a kid that all they want to do is talk about, locomotives, like they're going to talk at people until they meet someone who talks back, right? And the kid doesn't have to change. They're just in a different setting. So we say dabble, like horizontal, give them exposure to all kinds of things. And again, we're very proud of the things we have. Um, Usually someone reads our courses and they're like, "Oh, my kid would be perfect here," like you just did. It's right? Like if I listed them out, you'd be like, "Oh." And then the second one is dive. So that's where you're talking about the depth, right? How can we get great depth and complexity? We have a philosophy class for 8-year-olds, right? And so these kids are like reading essentially the watered down versions of Socrates, and they're having Socratic seminars, right? And or we're taking big concepts out of Kant, whatever it might be, and we're having deep conversations about social contracts and things like that. So how can you give them all the upside without the down, right? How can you not overwhelm them and then make them work hard, but they want to because they care and it's authentic. I think
Oh my
make is
God.
the wrong word. Encourage them to work hard, right?
So I know that, okay, I know I work with some schools that are private schools and they are for gifted kids. And one of the things that I noticed that many of them do is passion projects. Um, Here's my 2 cents about it, whether you guys want to hear it or not, but you are going to listen. Ha ha ha, because I am here with a
That's
podcast.
power,
It's
power.
power of the mic. And I'm not going to drop it because it's going to make a horrible sound. But what I wanted to say is that with the passion project, which is an amazing idea, it's like, you're telling kids, go research something they're interested in. Having them take notes, finding resources, all this kind of stuff, which is needed, I'm not saying no, can be done maybe in a less academic way, because sometimes they are required to write MLA style and or whatever they're using. And they don't need it yet until they're in college or until they are in high school. So requesting this from a sixth grader or fifth grader and not let them really explore the content that they're interested in. And just, add all this layer of, okay, so now we're going to do, I'm going to have you work on a document where you're going to put your resources, but that's fine. But then you need to write an essay about it and do a research about it and da, 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 which I love. I mean, I do the two with some of my students that I know can do this kind of work. And if they don't, we scaffold. So like everything you just said, make them work hard because they want to. If the interest is there, we can also show the research in a different way and the resource that we're using in a different way than just like putting it on a piece of paper if they are dysgraphic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll speak to that personally, kind of going back to one of your earlier questions, and then programmatically. So personally, like I was 30 years old when I started Young Scholars Academy, and I never read a whole book all the way through. Not because I didn't want to, because it's not easy for me to read, right? I really got into certain books. It's just I'm so slow and it was so difficult. I would buy, this is like a really empty bookshelf, but I have a massively full bookshelf behind me in elsewhere in my house. And I would buy the books with like the intention of like I'm gonna be different. This one will be different, right? But you can't just like will yourself into overcoming dyslexia, right? It's not like I mean, there are interventions you can, and again, you're the ed therapist, not me, but like there are interventions you can do, right? But you don't just like muscle in, right? Um, when I turned 30 and I wanted to start Young Scholars Academy, all of a sudden it was authentic. I, a 15-year teacher, am going to start a virtual village. Right? How do you do that? And then I had to read books. And what did I do? I didn't just say, nope, now it's authentic. I got audiobooks, right?
Hmm.
So this combination of like it's authentic, it's on fire. I'm so excited about it, and I can differentiate the way that I intake it. Uh, Open worlds for me, and now I read a book a month, which has completely transformed my life. And so one is so speaking personally, like something that I cared about, something I was going to throw I quit my job and it was like T minus this many months until you're not making money and you need to do this thing because you want to lead a revolution for strengths, right?
Hmm.
Number two, like programmatically, we have a program which is I'm really proud of, which is sort of the backbone of our work, which is called fellowship, and essentially kind of like Lord of the Rings idea. Like these kids are they're going on a journey throughout the year. They're they pick what they want and they pick how it looks. They pick the product, they pick the process, and then we build in the executive function skills along the way.
Yeah, you touched a really, sorry for stopping you. You
No,
touched
yeah,
one of the most important point that to do a passion project, you have to have support on your executive functioning skills.
absolutely. Right. Because how many neurodivergent people have a billion ideas that they haven't been able to start, right? It's not because they don't want to, right? I have so many things that like if I had more time I would do, or if I had more follow-up I would do. So we need executive function. And it's the best way to learn anything is in an authentic place where you can fail. And so we have, we're doing backward planning. We're like, okay, where do you want to end up in 36 weeks? That's a massive like idea for an 11-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how are we going to get you there? What milestones do we have to hit? What are we going to have to do? What order do we do it in? So we have kids making podcasts. We have kids making websites, coding, making video games, making video game mods. We had a student make a solar oven. We had a student write a book, and then we had another student write fan fiction off this student's book. So like I mean, there's so much happening, but they care about it. So they're
Yeah.
staying up late. They're getting up early because it's their thing. And I think that much of education loses that. And if you really want to get someone will say to me like, "Oh, my kid can't pay attention. How are they going to work virtually? They can't focus." I'm like, they're bored.
Yeah.
It's not that they can't focus. I will stay up all night sometimes by accident because I'm so pumped up about something and I'm like dysregulated. Um, that's I'm not able to pay attention for 5 minutes in other meetings, right? It's not like I'm magically having a massive change. There's just dopamine flooding my prefrontal cortex and I'm super jazzed up about it right now. So um, we just need to better understand who we're dealing with, and then we need to help them because these kids are the future change leaders, right? Like all the people we
Yes.
love in history, like oh Steve Jobs, Ben Franklin, Simone
Yeah.
Biles. It's like these are all twice exceptional people, right?
Yeah. Michael
Oh
Phelps.
Abraham Lincoln, all these people, right? Yeah, like um, these are all people who have like why do we celebrate them? Because they're freakishly focused on doing something extraordinarily well that was so different, right? And they've gone so deep into space. They've started something new. They've created their own space.
The
And
shakers of the world. We need them.
exactly. Exactly. And that's not to put pressure on anyone. Like if you have this brain, it doesn't mean you need to go produce and be the next Steve
No,
Jobs. I
no, no.
think that's an unfortunate thing that comes out of a lot of these conversations. Um, but what I mean is like, let's find your thing. Let's find your
Yeah.
bliss. Let's find the thing that lights you up. And then let's help you get extraordinarily good at it.
Yeah.
Because number one, you're going to feel good. Number two, you're going to make great contributions to society, perhaps, or at least you'll be open to that. And number three, it creates a mosaic. It creates a well-rounded space where people are like developing their talents to the nth degree and making contributions and kind of balancing each other out by, I don't like to do accounting. Luckily, I have an accountant, right?
Mhm.
I'm not able to fix my toilet necessarily. but I can call in a plumber when I break something, right? Like uh, having this talents developed and having these strengths developed makes these people feel great. It makes them earn and achieve and be able to contribute to society and partake in society. And it helps us go new places, discover new worlds, create new medicines, all the stuff.
So I'm going to invite you to dream with me for a moment. And if more schools, like I mentioned, do the passion projects, which I do really like, um, and we adopted this kind of like strength-based talent focus model, I would say tomorrow, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. Um, maybe with AI, I don't know. What would education look like, and what kind of young adults would would we start seeing more of?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, I always like to check myself. There's obviously a lot of privilege involved in programs like ours, right? Like
Mhm.
what you can do, our average class size is five, right? So you're getting 20% of a really talented teacher's attention. That's very different from 45, right? So I always like to say that. But that said, if you are a true differentiation guru, you can make it so that everyone is doing really high level stuff with fairly low touch. I think if you can become the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, as one of my mentors always says, if you can like float around the room, you can create a really good learning environment, and the size doesn't matter as much. To answer your question, I think when we set students free, there are non-negotiables. I get this comes up a lot when I speak at a conference. Someone's like, I hear you talking about strengths, but like, don't people need to learn? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Everybody should learn how to read, write, know basic geography, checking and, banking and basic things like that. Um, of course, no doubt. And I think that there's a lot of merit to. I struggled with math my whole life. I stayed after as soon as I got to high school. I would stay after an hour every day and meet with my teacher because I just needed help with that and reading too. But what I learned was not only like hard work ethic, and I learned like strategic mathematical analytical thinking. And I think one of my strengths today is that I reside at the intersection of a creative and an engineer. I have sort of these like split brain thing, and it helps serves me very well. Um, what would it look like in the world if we could snap our fingers and people would develop talents and strengths? I think that there would be a lot less anxiety, depression. I think there would be a lot more excitement, a lot more innovation. I think one of the most important things that we could do in strength-based learning is to take away fear of failure. The greatest people that have achieved huge feats have a I have an uncle who's wildly successful. He started one of the biggest companies in the whole world. And when I asked him, what is the number one thing that attributed to your success? He said, I have a higher risk taking threshold than most. And my motto is nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I was always taken by that. We need, again, we love, the Wright brothers and people like that. It's like, well, they crashed an airplane 4 times a day before dinner, right? And so, how can we empower our kids to fail early, fail often, and fail at doing what they love until they don't, right? How can they build that feedback loop? And then in the context of their strengths and interests, how can we teach them like 21st century skills? You mentioned AI. Already, it's 2026 at the time of recording this. It's March right now. China has already mandated, and I'm not condoning anything that China does. I just think it's interesting for observational standpoint. We're in a sort of cold war of sorts. China has mandated AI learning all the way down to elementary school, and these kids are already interacting with LLMs, coding in LLMs, prompting, and if we're predicting a future where the whole workforce is upside down because of AI taking jobs and so forth, why would you not equip a kid to do that kind of stuff? And why would you not make it mandatory? And why would you not bake it into their strength area and interest area? Right. And so this kind of a long-winded answer, but I think that we would have a much more colorful, fruitful, happy world where people are going way deeper, having magnificent obsessions, learning important skills, and making these. I said this before, but I love this idea of a mosaic. instead of a painting where everybody's kind of like a homogeneous mix match of, green and purple and whatever, and all smudges together and makes one color. A mosaic has this like collective beauty where it's a piece of art that's larger than each piece, but each piece maintains its individuality, right? Sharp edges, cracked glass, marble, you know, and it all, if you zoom in, you can tell what it is, and it's unique, and it contributes to a bigger work. And I think that's ultimately the goal of like real strength-based education.
That's beautifully said. And for our parents out there, I just want to add that um, we understand that there are people listening to us from different places in the world. And thank you, first and foremost. And second of all, um, have your child explore, experiment. Just have it as an experiment and see. And even if they're making mistake or there is an error, it's like you said, we learn through that. Our brain needs that. So no matter where you are in the world, if your child is interested in whatever, baking, chemistry, do experiment in the kitchen. You can find things online. You can go to your public library and get information there too. There are things that are done for free. There are meetup groups. Join a community that you can make connection with like-minded individuals that, like I always say, scratch your brain in the right way and your kids' brain in the right way. And just let them explore and learn through doing.
Yeah, I love that. And there are so many things out there. And I think it's just being creative and curating. And again, if you have a kid who has a unique brain, that there is, there's a lot of pressure and requirements that you might have. And I would say building on what you just said, Mayan, is also trying not to compare yourself as much. You're going to have neurotypical kids in your child's circle, and you might see their parents or your neighbors or your cousins or your brother and sister and say like, man, it's so different, and we're not doing this, and you're on a very different path, and there's no better or worse. Um, but try to give yourself as much grace as possible. You have a kid who is more complex and, quite frankly, more interesting, more likely to do awesome stuff, um, and they're going to need more intervention, more executive function support, more introductions, and for longer probably too. And that's all okay because everyone's on their own timeline.
Thank you for saying that.
I think that's important.
Just everybody's on their own timeline. That's so important. Yeah, nobody's. I know we are living in a world that in the school system, we need to get to that, end of the year. Um, but yeah, we're all on our own timeline. And we're here for you, for our listeners. There are resources, and Sam will share his resources on. We're gonna have it in the podcast description. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. And Sam, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. And I guess if I could leave everyone with just one thought, it's just no one cares what you're bad at when you're really good at something. And so if you can help your student believe that and help them get good at their strengths, as my favorite educational psychologist said, no one cares about Picasso's ability to do complex math or Einstein's ability to paint. So he went on to say, why are we obsessed with kids getting good at what they're bad at? So parents, think about that as you go forth. Empower your kids to believe in that and help them get dangerously good at certain things that they enjoy so that they can lead lives that are fulfilling and make a big leap into a, abundant, successful, love-filled life in their zone of genius and their zone of strengths.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. It was a fantastic episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Apple Podcast and on Spotify. Take care. Bye bye.